Most people treat growing food like a job that never ends. Every spring you buy the seeds again, plant again, baby them for months, harvest, then rip the dead plants out and throw them away, and next year you start the whole cycle over from zero. It's expensive, it's endless, and almost nobody tells you there's another way. These 12 vegetables break the cycle completely. You plant them one time, in a single pot, and they come back on their own, year after year, some of them for decades, with almost no work from you. They're perennials, the closest thing gardening has to free food on autopilot. One you plant from a single crown and harvest for the next 20 years, one grows from a knob in your spice drawer so you never buy it again, and one comes back so aggressively you'll be giving it away. Stay to the end and I'll show you the free trick that turns any one of these into an unlimited supply of new plants. Let's count down. Number 12, the Welsh onion, a perennial onion that means you never buy onion sets again. Give it a pot 8 inches deep and a spot with a few hours of light, and that's the last bit of shopping you'll do. Here's the difference from a normal onion. A regular onion is an annual. It builds one bulb, you pull it and it's gone. The Welsh onion never bothers with a bulb at all. Instead, it grows in a clump and quietly splits itself underground, one shoot becoming two, two becoming four, until a single plant you set this year is a thick cluster of 15 or 20 hollow green stems. You harvest by cutting the outer stems at the soil line, and the clump just refills itself. Plant one, and 3 years later you're dividing it to give away. Number 11, you grow from a single root, and it comes back angrier every year. Number 11, horseradish, the crop you plant once and basically cannot kill. Use a deep container, at least 12 inches, and honestly, a container is the smart way to grow it, because in open ground it can take over an entire bed. You start it from a single pencil-thick root cutting laid on its side, and that's it. Horseradish banks all its energy in a fat taproot, and every tiny fragment left behind regrows into a whole new plant, which is exactly why it returns every spring, stronger and broader than the year before. One root cutting gives you a lifetime of that sharp, sinus-clearing heat, and the flavor peaks the moment you grate it fresh, something you simply cannot buy in a jar. Leave it alone, harvest in autumn after the first frost sweetens the root, and it'll outlive almost everything else on your balcony. Number 10 grows from a knob you already have in your kitchen. Number 10, turmeric, the golden spice you'll never buy again once you start. A wide pot 10 inches deep is plenty, kept warm and out of harsh direct sun. You plant it from a single fresh rhizome, the same knobby root sold in the grocery store, and here's the loop that makes it perennial. At harvest you break off a few fingers to use and replant the rest, so the supply never ends. Underground, each rhizome multiplies into a whole fist-sized clump over a single season, often 4 to 6 times what you started with. It dies back in winter, looks completely dead, then pushes up fresh tropical leaves again when it warms. The fresh root is far more aromatic than the dried powder, loaded with the compound curcumin, and one knob from the shop is the only one you ever need to buy. Number 9 is a leek that refuses to die. Number 9, the perennial leek, including the giant mild bulb sold as elephant garlic, a plant that quietly replants itself. A pot 10 inches deep suits it, and once it's in, you can stop thinking about it. Where an ordinary leek or a head of garlic is lifted whole and gone, the perennial leek leaves small offsets, little bulblets, clustered around its base underground. Every one of those is next year's plant. Harvest the big central stalk, and the offsets you left behind sprout into a fresh stand, so a single planting turns into a self-renewing patch that thickens season after season. You get mild, sweet leek stems and fat, garlicky cloves from the same low-effort clump year after year without ever lifting a finger to re-sow. Number 8 is a vegetable that grows wild on the seashore and comes back for a decade. Number 8, sea kale, a true perennial vegetable that grows wild along the coast and lives for a decade or more in a pot. Give it a deep container, 12 inches, with free-draining soil, and plant it once from a root cutting called a thong. In early spring, you cover the emerging shoots with an upturned bucket to block the light, a trick called blanching, and in a few weeks you harvest pale, tender stems that taste like a cross between asparagus and mild cabbage, a vegetable people have prized for 200 years. Then you uncover it and let the big blue-green leaves feed the root for the rest of the year. It asks for almost nothing, shrugs off salt, wind and cold, and rewards that single planting with a gourmet spring harvest year after year. Number 7 looks like a 6-foot silver thistle, and the part you eat is the stem. Number 7, the Cardoon, the dramatic architectural cousin of the artichoke, and one of the most striking things you can grow in a large pot. It needs room, so a container at least 14 inches deep, but plant the crown once and it returns as a towering fountain of silver, deeply cut leaves every year. With an artichoke you eat the flower bud. With a cardoon you eat the thick leaf stalks, blanched pale and tender, with a nutty, faintly bitter artichoke flavor prized across Italy and Spain. It's a perennial that doubles as the centerpiece of your whole balcony. Plenty of people would grow it for the way it looks alone. Cut it back in pair, and it powers up from its established roots the next spring, bigger than before. Now we break into the top 6, and this is where the plant at once payoff gets serious. That's the first 6 perennials in the ground, crops you plant a single time and then mostly ignore. But the top 6 are the heavy hitters, the ones that don't just survive on their own, they feed you for 5, 10, even 20 years from one planting. Coming up, a strange Andean tuber that tastes like a sweet lemony potato, a kale that grows into a tree you start from a single stick, and a number 1 crop so long-lived you could plant it today and still be cutting from it in 20 years. Quick one while we're here, out of the first 6, which one are you actually putting in a pot? Tell me in the comments, I read every single one. Now number 6. Number 6. Oca, also called the New Zealand yam, a brilliant, almost unknown perennial tuber that thrives in a container. Plant a single tuber in a deep pot or a grow bag and let it sprawl. It carries lush, clover-like leaves all summer and waits until the short days of late autumn to swell its crop underground. Then you tip out the pot and find a cluster of knobbly jewel-colored tubers, red, pink, and yellow, that taste like a tangy lemony potato and can be eaten raw or cooked. Here's the perennial part. You save a few of the smallest tubers and replant them so you never buy seed stock again, and any you miss in the soil sprout on their own next year. It's almost completely pest-free, and it produces in cool, low-light conditions that would starve an ordinary potato. Number 5 is a kale that grows into a small tree, and you start it from a single stick. Number 5. Tree collards, also known as perennial kale, a leafy green that flatly refuses to behave like an annual. Give it a sturdy pot 12 inches deep and a stake to lean on, because this plant grows upward into a woody, branching shrub 5 to 6 feet tall that lives for years, sometimes a full decade. Where a normal kale exhausts itself and bolts in a single season, tree collards almost never flower, so they keep pushing out tender, sweet, purple-tinged leaves the entire time, even through mild winters. And here's the magic: tree collards rarely set seed, so you propagate them from cuttings. You snap off a branch, push it into a pot of soil, and it roots into a whole new plant, free, identical, endless. One plant becomes your entire green supply, and a handful of sticks becomes plants for every neighbor you've got. Number 4, you plant 1 tuber, and it comes back forever, whether you want it to or not. Number 4, the Jerusalem artichoke, or sunchoke, the most unstoppable food plant on this list. A single tuber the size of a small ginger root, dropped into a deep pot, gives you a towering stand of bright, sunflower-like blooms by late summer and a heavy crop of crunchy, nutty tubers underground by autumn. And here's why a container is essential. You'll never harvest every tuber, and every fragment you leave behind sprouts the following year, which means once you plant it, you have it for life. It's so productive a single pot can yield several pounds. The tubers store best left right in the soil until you want them, and the plant survives hard frosts that flatten everything around it. Plant it once, and it's genuinely easier to keep than to get rid of. Number 3 hands you a gourmet vegetable every summer for years, from one plant. Number 3, the globe artichoke. Proof that the most expensive vegetable in the shop can come back free, year after year, from a single crown. It wants a big container, 16 inches across, and one good plant fills it. The artichoke you buy is the unopened flower bud, and a mature plant sends up several of them every summer. Then, instead of dying, it goes dormant and returns from the same crown the next spring, productive for around 5 years before it needs dividing. In a cold winter you cut it back and wrap the pot. In a mild one it barely pauses. For the cost of a couple of supermarket artichokes, you get a striking silver plant that pays you a gourmet harvest every summer for years and stands as an architectural centerpiece the rest of the time. Number 2 is a crown you plant once and then harvest every spring for 15 years straight. Number 2, rhubarb, maybe the ultimate low-effort perennial, a plant you put in once and harvest from for 15 years or more. It needs a genuinely big pot, at least 16 inches deep and wide, because the crown gets large, but that single planting is the whole investment. You don't even harvest the first year, you let it establish. After that, every spring it explodes out of the ground with thick, tart red stalks, completely on its own, with zero replanting and almost no care beyond water and the odd feed. It actually needs the winter cold to trigger that strong spring growth. It shrugs off frost, and an established crown produces more than most families can eat. Pull the stalks, never the leaves. The leaves aren't edible, and that one crown keeps delivering pie and crumble for well over a decade. And number 1 is the king of them all. Plant it once and harvest for the next 20 years. And number 1, asparagus, the undisputed king of plant it once, because a single planting can feed you for 20 years or more. This is the long game. You plant dormant roots called crowns in a deep container, at least 18 inches, and then you wait. You don't cut a single spear the first year and only a little the second. You let the plant build a massive underground root system. But from the 3rd year onward, every spring, that bed sends up tender green spears for weeks, straight out of the soil, and it keeps doing it, faithfully, for 2 decades. Think about that. The crowns you plant this weekend could still be feeding you when the kids have left home. Fresh-cut asparagus is so much sweeter than the woody supermarket version it's almost a different vegetable, and pound for pound it's one of the highest value crops you can grow. It's the closest thing there is to a food machine you switch on once and leave running. Before we finish, here's the free trick I promised, the one that turns any of these 12 into an unlimited supply of new plants. The trick is called division, and it's how you make perennials multiply for free. Most of the crops on this list, the rhubarb, the artichoke, the Welsh onion, the sea kale, the sunchoke, grow from a crown or a clump that gets bigger every year. Every few years, in early spring or autumn, you tip the plant out of its pot and you'll see it has formed several distinct growing points. You pull or cut the root crown into chunks with a clean blade, making sure each piece has at least one bud or shoot. Replant each chunk in its own pot, and you've just turned one plant into 3, 4, 5 new ones, genetically identical and completely free. Division doesn't harm the parent, it actually rejuvenates it, because an overcrowded old crown slows down. So the real math of perennials isn't one plant forever, it's one plant becoming a whole collection, and then becoming gifts for everyone you know, without spending another cent. So here's the shift. Most people are stuck on the annual treadmill, buying, planting, and replanting the same crops from scratch every single year, forever. Perennials break that loop completely. You do the work one time, in a single pot, and the plant takes over, feeding you for years, multiplying itself for free, and asking for almost nothing back. Pick just one this weekend, a knob of turmeric, a clump of Welsh onions, a rhubarb crown in a big pot, and in a year you'll wonder why you ever did it the hard way. And if you want to get the absolute most out of whatever you grow, choosing the right plant is only half the battle. The next video breaks down 10 proven, science-backed tricks to double the harvest out of any container, the difference between a handful of food and a balcony that genuinely feeds you. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Tell me down in the comments which of these 12 you're planting first, and I'll see you in the next one.